Hello and welcome to Prime Code Media. In this video, I'll be discussing Bootstrap Typography. Typography is the art or process of arranging text content in a way that makes the content look clear and visually appealing to the reader. The documentation says to us all HTML headings H1 through H6, which we discussed in detail in the HTML for Beginners series, are available, and here are examples of how they look, and down here is the example code. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this example code, and then I am going to paste it inside my code editor like so. And then the first thing I am going to do here is to comment out the CDN link here. What I want to do is for us to see how these headings look without Bootstrap. Now this is how they look without Bootstrap, and then I'm going to go back into my code editor and uncomment the CDN link, meaning that we are now using Bootstrap. Now let's refresh. Now as you can see, this is how now the headings look. As you can see, the text content looks different, and this is what the documentation means when it says all HTML headings H1 through H6 are available. Next, the documentation says H1 through H6 classes are also available for when you want to match font styling of a heading but cannot use the associated HTML element. So for example, to put this into practice, I'm just going to come inside my code editor here. I'm going to comment out these headings like so, and then I am going to add a heading. I'm going to add an H1 like so, and then the heading will just read, this is the heading. I'm also going to add a paragraph using p tag, and then add some lorem ipsum text inside here. Now let me save. Let's go and see if everything is rendered accordingly inside my browser. Okay, now fine, we have a heading. This is the heading, and then we have the paragraph right here. Now what I want to do, I want this paragraph to match the heading. So what I can do to achieve that, I can, for example, come here to the heading and then inspect the heading to see its dimensions. For example, as you can see, the size of this heading, the font size is 2.5 rem. And then if I scroll down here, there's more information or some more dimensions here. We have the margin top, margin bottom, font weight, and line weight. So I can, for example, target this paragraph inside the style sheet and apply all these dimensions. Let me just do that. I'm going to copy everything right here and then go inside here, inside my style sheet. I'm going to use the p tag to target the paragraph, and then I'm going to paste everything inside here. And then the only thing that I think I've left out is the font size. I'm just going to copy it here. The font size, I'm going to also paste it inside right here, and then I'm going to save my work here. And then let's go back to the browser and see if through this process I have successfully managed to match the paragraph to the heading. Now let me just refresh. Now, as you can see, I have successfully managed to match the paragraph to the heading by targeting the paragraph inside the style sheet and applying all the dimensions of the heading. But this is a roundabout way of doing this. So when it comes to this, Bootstrap comes in very, very handy. Now I'm going to come back here and just delete this. and let me just save. We are going to use Bootstrap because Bootstrap offers us a much easier way of achieving this. So I'm going to give our paragraph a class. So I'm just simply going to come inside the paragraph here and add a class, and the class will be of h1. But maybe before I do that, let me just go back to the browser and then refresh so that everything is back to how it was earlier before we make changes or before we start adding a class to the paragraph. So this is how the content looks like inside the code editor. I'm now going to add a class to the paragraph, and the class is that of h1. Okay, h1 like so. So I'm going to save, and let's go back to the browser and refresh to see if everything is rendered accordingly. Now this is how everything looks now. We have managed to achieve this, that is to match the paragraph text to the heading by simply adding a class. So this is a much easier way of doing this than the roundabout way that we used earlier when we targeted the paragraph inside the style sheet. Now while the heading and the text content here look the same, the browser will be able to distinguish between them, and this is because the browser will be able to interpret and render this as a heading, and it will be able to interpret and render this as a paragraph that has a class of h1. Bootstrap also allows us to customize headings. Now, if you check inside the documentation uses the small element as well as the text muted as examples. So I am also going to use this inside my code editor. But first, I'm just going to remove this class because the aim here was just to show you that you can be able to match a paragraph to a heading by using a class. So I'm just going to remove it and go back to my browser and refresh so that everything is back to how it was before we used that class. I'm going to customize this heading using a Bootstrap class. Now what I'm going to do inside here, I am going to add the small element here like so, and then I'm going to cut this these two words here, and then I am going to paste them inside the small element, and then I am going to give the small element a class of text muted. Now let me save. Let's go back to the browser and see if we've successfully managed to customize our heading. Let me refresh. Now as you can see, the heading is muted, so these words are muted, and on top of that they are not only muted, but as you can see the text is now a bit smaller than this text, and this is because we have used the small element. Now if you just want your text to be muted and you don't want changes to the size, you can for example use a span. Let's go back and use a span instead of the small element. I'm just going to change this to a span, and let me also change this closing tag to a span like so. Let me save, and then let's go back to the browser and refresh. Now as you can see, the only change to this is just the fact that it is now muted, but the size is back to normal, and this is because instead of the small element we are now using the span. Now if you want your heading to stand out more than normal headings, Bootstrap has got you covered. The Bootstrap headings have a larger font size and lighter font weight, and there are 6 classes to choose from. And these are the examples of classes that we can choose from. So I'm going to apply this to my heading. So I'm going to give my heading a display. So I'm going to use this class. So inside my code editor, I'm going to give my heading a class. So it's going to have a class of display 6. So I'm going to save my work. So this is the class that I have added to my heading. So let's see how it looks with this class. Let me refresh. Now this is how my heading looks with the display 6 class. And to make a paragraph stand out from regular paragraphs, all you need to do is to add a lead class. Let's see how the documentation says we should do this. So here is an example of a lead class used inside a paragraph. So all we need to do is just to add this class if we want our paragraphs to stand out from regular paragraphs. So let's just use this to our paragraphs. I'm just going to add a class to this paragraph, and then the class will be that of lead. Now let's save and see how the paragraph now looks with this class. There we go. Now this is how our paragraph looks with that class of lead added to it. So what Bootstrap also allows us to do is to use inline HTML elements to style text content. For example, the use of the mark element to highlight content. So I'm just going to use this to highlight a piece of the text inside my code editor. Inside here, I'm just going to use the highlight or the mark element here. Let me just add a mark, the mark element like so. So I'm just going to cut 3 or just 4 of these 5 words here, and then I am going to paste them inside this element and then save. Let's go into the browser and see how these words now look. Now, as you can see, these words are now highlighted, and we have managed to achieve this by just using the mark element. The other elements that you can also use to style your text content include the del element. This you can use if the text is meant to be treated as a deleted text. So this is how it will look, for example. And then the other one will be the as element. This you can use if the text is meant to be treated as no longer accurate. The other ones include those that we discussed in our HTML for beginner series. Those are the semantic elements that we discussed, and those include the use of, for example, the strong element instead of the bold to bolden text, and the use of the M instead of the I tag if you want to italicize a text. There's still a lot that we have not discussed regarding typography, but I'm sure you now appreciate how helpful this Bootstrap feature can be if you want to customize your content. Please continue and check what else you can do in the documentation, whether it's about text utilities, abbreviations, block codes, and so on. Play around with the code examples, and please feel free to share in the comments section. Till we code again next time, take care. Bye.